This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Sports Spectrum. We're so glad that you tuned into our show today. My name is Jason Romano. Our website, great place to start and great place to bookmark for all of the content here at Sports Spectrum. It's simply sportspectrum.com. That has all of our podcasts. It has a daily devotional, and it has articles written every single day on the intersection of sports and faith over at sportspectrum.com. And then you can email me directly if you want to get in touch with us. Jason at sportspectrum.com is my email. Maybe you have a guest idea. Maybe you have a topic or a story that you want to share. You can send that to me directly, Jason at sportspectrum.com. And our show today is presented by IJM, the International Justice Mission, great partners in the work against slavery and violence. We love IJM and what they stand for. You can check them out at ijm.org/TF to become a freedom partner as they help to protect more than 150 million people around the world from slavery and from violence. The International Justice Mission, ijm.org/TF. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And right now, because COVID-19 has impacted so many, there's children around the world who are living in poverty. And the issue of food has gone from hunger to starvation. The pandemic has magnified these needs, and these kids are in crisis. So Compassion has teamed up with their pro athlete friends to help fill the stadium and help these children in crisis. You can learn more by going to fillthestadium.com right now, fillthestadium.com. Click Give Now, and you can partner with them and help these kids who are in crisis. fillthestadium.com. Today on the show on Sports Spectrum, really excited to welcome Drew Stanton, the former NFL quarterback. This was a lot of fun, this conversation with Drew. Of course, the former NFL quarterback played his college ball at Michigan State, selected in the second round of the 2007 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions. He was picked number 43 overall back in 2007 and spent from 2007 to 2011 with Detroit. Played with quarterbacks like Jon Kitna and Matthew Stafford and some others. Then he had a stint with the Jets, which is how we start our conversation. His tiny stint with the New York Jets. Ended up with the Colts in 2012, playing with Andrew Luck. Then to Arizona, playing with Carson, and then finishing it out his NFL career in 2018 and 2019 with the Cleveland Browns and mentoring a young quarterback named Baker Mayfield. Drew Stanton joins us today. We got a lot to talk about with Drew in a short amount of time. The difficulty of playing the quarterback position, what it's like to be a former NFL player after playing football for almost 30 years, I think he said, 25 years. So it's been a long time. And then what's it like to live out your faith in the NFL as a quarterback and as a believer in Jesus Christ? Lots of fun stories, great conversation with a great guy, Drew Stanton, and he joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Let's take a listen. Drew Stanton, welcome to Sports Spectrum, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. It's always interesting to hear if somebody's going to include the Jets because that was a very short stint.
Yeah, let's start there. So you do your research as a host, right? And I go and look on the Pro Football Reference page or Wikipedia or just the internet, and it says, "Oh, he had a stint with the Jets and then the Colts in 2012." How long exactly was that stint with the Jets?
Oh, it was a week, I think.
Was it really?
It was this very interesting triangle. That was the year that Peyton went to Denver and Tim Tebow went up to New York. And then as soon as he got there, I was like, this is not what I signed up for. This is, Tim's a great guy, but I didn't want to make it a popularity contest. I mean, they had a press conference for him as soon as he showed up, and I'm on the phone trying to talk to Tannenbaum and trying to talk to Rex, and I don't know what's going on. And, through the provision of God, I ended up getting traded down to Indianapolis. So it created that triangle, as I sometimes joke about, but it was truly the best thing that could have happened to me after I thought I was making the right decision by signing with the Jets.
That's probably a consistent theme on your journey, I would say, is God's provision in a lot of the different opportunities that you've had, isn't it?
It is, it's truly by the grace of God that I've survived for 13 years. And looking back, and I mean, I remember being 2 years in, and being like, man, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around here. They drafted Matthew Stafford first overall after coming off of our 0-16 season, and then I was like, well, he's the franchise. They drafted him number 1 overall. Where do I fit in? And then I found ways to adapt. I found ways to try and make myself valuable. But even that, it's hard when you kind of get typecasted in an organization as a guy that's a flop or a bust or whatnot. And it was difficult. But at the same time, getting a fresh start going to Indianapolis and being with Chuck Pagano was an absolute blessing. I mean, just the energy he brought, the positivity. And then obviously where I met Bruce Arians that catapulted me over to Arizona, where I was able to have, the best portion of my career.
Can somebody call you a flop if you played 13 seasons in the NFL? Seriously, right?
It's this weird, kind of trade-off, right? So I've played 13 years, or I've been on an NFL roster for 13 seasons, but I think I have maybe 17 career starts. So it's like, how does somebody survive for that long? Like I said, I knew I was going to have to find a way to be valuable. And I found those things. I found ways to be an asset to everybody in the organization. And within that, I kind of found my niche and got used to being in the background, really enjoyed being in the background and kind of thrived in that role and really enjoyed it in a lot of senses.
So this is the first time you're not playing football since when? Long time, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I started football in 4th grade. So I'm 36 now, and however old you are when you're, I mean,
what are you, 9 years old, something like that?
Yeah.
In 4th grade.
Yeah.
So 27 years.
Yeah. It's the first August that I feel like I've been able to come up for air and be like, oh wow, but at the same time, I know God has me exactly where He wants me, and that's really what I've relied on. Once last year when we found out my wife was pregnant with our 4th, even before COVID hit and the whole pandemic shut us down, I made a decision that I was going to be here with my family, and felt like God needed me here more than He needed me on a football roster. Now, that's just the way that I felt, and feel really lucky and fortunate to be able to survive as long as I did for 13 years, because it was definitely survival. A weight was lifted as soon as I was kind of like, oh, you know what? I don't have to worry about being in shape. I don't have to worry about studying film. I don't have to worry about knowing the roster or making sure such and such is okay. Now my personality is still that way, so I still check in with guys that I care about in the NFL and just see how they're doing. There's such a human side that gets lost in translation in this business, because it's such a immediate gratification of, well, what have you done for me lately type of a feeling. And once you feel like you're that kind of a commodity, you want somebody or other people to surround yourself in a community that really you can rely on to lift you up if you're down, or keep you humble if you get too high.
Is that what you miss the most? I mean, I always like asking the question to former players, the moment or moments that come to mind that they miss the most as an NFL player. Is that it, the community and being around the guys?
It definitely is. I think because we're all working for a common goal, and you realize that each and every year is completely different. How you approach the year, there's so many things that transpire. And when you're in season, it's literally like Groundhog's Day. And for 13 years, I had a routine of a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday. Well, I take that back. For probably 10 years, I had a routine. My first couple of years, I was trying to find one. And luckily, I crossed paths with Sean Hill, and he showed me what it was. And I could literally still go back and recite everything I did throughout the course of the week that made me feel prepared as a backup quarterback. I mean, I went 4 years without starting a game. I was fortunate to go in and win that game. And as a backup quarterback, that's how we're measured. Can we go in and win a football game, or win, a period of a stretch if the starter's out? And if you don't, you're out of the league. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're being evaluated on every single thing. So again, being able to answer the bell when that was called, the short number of time that it was very gratifying as well.
I remember talking to Dan Orlovsky, who did you and Dan intersect each other in Detroit?
We
right.
Overlapped. Yeah.
Dan's a great friend, and he's a great guy. But I asked him about the moment where he was able to accept, if you call it that, the fact that he wasn't probably going to be a starting quarterback, but he could still last in this league in finding a different way to be valuable. For you were a 2nd-round pick. When did that moment take place for you when you, I don't know if you want to say realized, or maybe you just always thought you could be a starter and you played that way and prepared that way, but the fact that you were going to be kind of in this new role as a guy who was a backup, a mentor? When was that moment when you were able to realize the journey is maybe taking a little bit different course, but it's still a journey?
Yeah, no, it's I think it's such a fine line. You hear people talk about it, and I love to hear guys' responses to it, just because, you can see everything that needs to be said throughout what their comments are, and being able to extract that. And as a starter, you prepare as a starter, you get all the reps, you can do all those things, and obviously everybody loves that. Like that's the perfect scenario. But there's only 32 of those jobs. And as soon as they drafted Matthew, like I said, first overall, I wasn't stupid. And I was like, okay, well, then they brought Sean Hill in. And then I'm third. And I'm like, man, I might be on the outside looking in. I mean, I got a call from Scott Linehan, who I respect a great deal, the Sunday of cuts. And he said, I'm fighting for you. And I didn't even know I was on the bubble. Like, Jim Schwartz wanted to keep two quarterbacks. And week one in Chicago, Matthew dislocates his kneecap. Sean goes in and plays, and that was the whole like Calvin Johnson catch for the real sports fans that know, like the catch, that whole thing. And we came back. So I got to play that season, and I was on the brink of not even being on that roster. And so it's just crazy how God, like I said, has just looked out for me in so many steps, brought people into my life that have just poured into me, that have had a profound impact on me, and kind of kept me grounded, as I talked about. Along each step of the way, it was like, once I went to Indianapolis and was around Andrew Luck, and every quarterback I've been around, I've tried to learn something from, because there's so much knowledge. There's so many different ways people do things. And every quarterback that I've been around, I feel like I've learned a multitude of things, just because you can absorb and just put all this knowledge together. So when you get a chance to go out and do it, and being around Andrew, even though I felt like I was brought in there to be his mentor, and in some ways, hopefully he would say that I was, I learned a lot from him. He was so NFL ready. He was just so grounded. I've never been impressed with a rookie as much as I've been impressed with Andrew Luck. And I know BA made those comments of like, well, if you could put the perfect quarterback together with the arm and the head and the shoulders, he goes, well, we had one. It was in Indianapolis. His name was Andrew Luck. And, I still talk to him. I still love him dearly. And just my heart broke last year when he had to walk away from the game and the way that he was treated by the Indianapolis Colts fans, because my 1 year there, or I guess even 8 months, was tremendous. I mean, the fan base, everything about this city. My son was born there. I have the fondest memories of the Indianapolis Colts, the organization, the city, and to see the way that a guy that has poured his heart and soul into that organization was treated. It was unfortunate, but that's just a small amount of the people there, because without a doubt how much he meant to that city.
I don't think fans, even the most passionate fans of a team, I think of Philadelphia, I think of Seattle, I think of certainly Indianapolis, and a lot of these fan bases, Cleveland, where you played the last few years before you finished. I don't think those guys understand, or girls or whoever, fans in general, truly understand what it takes to get ready to play, to prepare every single week in this league, especially in a situation like you were in as a quarterback. Can you kind of describe, as best as possible for our listeners who are those fans, how difficult it truly is to play in the league, but to even be a quarterback, the most valued position in the league?
Yeah, it was when I had a chance to start over a period of time in Indianapolis, or in Arizona, when Carson got hurt. All of a sudden, so much more things got thrust on my plate. I had to do out-of-town media. I had to do in-town media. I had to do night before the game, go talk to the commentators. All of these things that are taken away from the one thing you actually want to do, and you get this opportunity. It's like, how can I juggle all these things? And I remember looking back and being like, man, this is just so difficult. And I couldn't imagine doing this or having done this for a long period of time. And you look at the guys that have this longevity, and there's balance to it, and you understand this balance. But going from a guy that hadn't done it to then being thrust into that, and then getting to go back to my spot of being a backup, it was nice in some sense. And everybody's like, well, it's the best job in the world to be the backup quarterback. And my response is yes, until you have to go in and play, and you don't play well. Then you're not a backup quarterback anymore. So I think just that mindset of what that takes when the limelight is always on you, it's draining. I mean, you look at somebody and like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he is a big fish in a small pond in Green Bay, and he's done it for a very long time at an extremely high level. And I think that he can't even go out to dinner.
Right. Yeah.
Like I guess you might go to Applebee's in Appleton or whatnot. I don't know what else is there, but there's not a whole lot there. But there's this sense like when I got to Arizona, it was great because you could go out and live your life. Everybody's so busy doing stuff, doing their own things that you still are viewed as a human being. I mean, even we'd go out to dinner with Carson. People would just come up and say hello. Now Larry is a little bit different just because he's,
Larry
he is who
Fitzgerald,
he
of
is. Yeah,
course.
exactly. Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah. So like Larry is a little bit different because he's so recognizable with the long hair and the huge smile and just vibrant when he walks into a room. But being able to just, again, like I said, just be a human being when you leave the facility is just gives you a chance to unwind. So all of these things, and we put enough pressure on ourselves, right? Like we're all our hardest critics as it is. And you sit there and you're being evaluated, you're being picked apart. And the media, depending on what city you're in, even like the media just thrives on negativity. And then when you get to a place like Indianapolis, I mean, the four guys that were a part of the media just came in the locker room kind of whenever. It wasn't like, hey, the locker room's open, locker room's closed, like it has been in other places. It's like, well, they came around, got their story. It was never like trying to poke and prod and just extract the negative things. It was like, hey, like, let's report what we're trying to report. Let's talk about the things that need to be talked about and really do, sports journalism in a way that can provide a lot of benefit for everybody involved.
I always say expectations too are more of a curse than a blessing in some ways, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Last year in Cleveland, it definitely was one of these things. So like, guys, I know we feel like we have the dream team, as once was said in Philadelphia, but there's so much more that goes into this game. And it truly is the greatest team sport, in my opinion, because it's 11 guys have to do their job on a single play. And if one guy messes up, the play fails. And that's just the beauty of this. And there's such a split-second decision you need to make as a quarterback. And that's one thing that I had to learn is like there's sometimes just you go through so many repetitions that you feel comfortable. You just trust the throw beyond the shadow of a doubt, and you just let it go. And there's guys that have done it at a high level because they just feel comfortable doing that. I had to learn that. I mean, I was like, if I didn't see a guy wide open or felt like he was going to be open, I wouldn't throw the ball. I'd be kind of like, oh, or like leave it short or something like that. But being able to like trust that a guy's exactly where he's going to be, and there might be a guy sitting right in your lap, and you sit there and you can just throw it and you complete that pass, like the amount of confidence that builds on top of being able to just go down the field and score, that's where you start like coming over the hump of a guy that lost his confidence early in the career like I did.
Quick break from our conversation to tell you about IJM, the International Justice Mission, sponsors and partners with us here at Sports Spectrum, believing every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. The International Justice Mission, partnering with local authorities to rescue victims of violence, bring criminals to justice, restoring survivors, and strengthening justice systems. They are helping to protect IJM as more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. But it's work that they cannot do alone. They need your help. They need our help, the help of Freedom Partners, some of IJM's most loyal partners in the work of justice. And their support of $24 or more each month helps survivors of slavery and violence from the moment they're rescued until they are fully restored. You can join the fight right now to end slavery in our lifetime by visiting the website ijm.org/TF to become a Freedom Partner today. ijm.org/TF. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And Compassion right now has a great initiative called Fill the Stadium. And I want you to think about this. COVID-19, right? It's left so many in crisis, but it's left children around the world who are living in poverty in deep, deep trouble. Issues of food have gone from hunger to starvation. The pandemic has magnified these needs. And think about Compassion and what they're about, right? This past spring, most of the events that Compassion International relies on to help sponsor these children in crisis were canceled due to COVID-19. And it's left nearly 70,000 kids in desperate need of help. Well, 70,000 also happens to be the average size of many pro football stadiums that were once filled and now sit mostly empty. Each of these 70,000 empty seats represents a child in crisis who needs you, who needs us to step up and fill the stadium. Here's what you can do. Go to the website, fillthestadium.com. That's the website, fillthestadium.com. You can team up with Compassion International and their pro athlete friends to help these kids in crisis. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. Go to fillthestadium.com, click Give Now, and help release these kids from poverty in Jesus' name. fillthestadium.com. Drew Stanton's joining us here today on Sports Spectrum, the former NFL quarterback. I want to talk about your faith and your journey to Jesus. Kind of share with us a little bit why that faith is so important to you, why it's, who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up going to church, grew up going on mission trips and doing a lot of different things and really enjoyed it. But it wasn't my own. My parents would be like, hey, we're picking you up for church. You spend the night at your friend's house on Saturday, we're going to pick you up for church. So it's kind of one of those things. I went a little bit kicking and screaming, but always enjoyed it, as a young kid. I've come by faith fairly easily, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I don't struggle with faith or believing that Jesus died on the cross for our sins or any of these things, but my faith wasn't my own. It was one of these things that I read it in a book and I believed it, and I was told that and I believed it. And so it wasn't until early in my NFL career that I was around Dave Wilson, the team chaplain in Detroit, which a lot of people know that name. And David A. Wilson had such a profound impact on me and my wife, and being able to do that. And so it was my third year in the NFL that Dave and Ann baptized me and my wife, Kristen. And really, that's when I started taking ownership, because it felt like it was just this up and down roller coaster. And Dave said something to me. He said, well, do you want God, or do you want God to make your life work? And my whole life before that, I was just trying to have God make my life work. When things were a struggle, like most of us, like we go to the Lord and ask for relief. But once my mindset shifted in that way, and I started thinking along the terms of that, of like, look, I'm all right, God, I'm living open-handedly. I'm all in, like wherever we're going to go. I don't know how long it's going to be. And through that, I was able to grow and have a personal relationship with God, with Jesus, and let the Holy Spirit grow within me, because I don't think that was necessarily true up to that point.
What was it like being a Christian in the NFL for you? I'm not saying struggles wise, but I think there's temptations and things that come at you, and certainly just getting this world of the NFL, it comes at you and it's probably all consuming, especially for 5 months, I would say, or 6 months. It's all you're thinking about, maybe throughout the whole year. So how did you balance that and still kind of be, a follower of Christ, staying connected to the Lord?
Well, I think it just depends on the team and the men that you're surrounded by. I went to Detroit right off the bat, and I was around Jon Kitna, and he was, everybody that knows Jon Kitna knows how intense he is. And I'm not like that. And he, day one, we're out there and we're playing on the practice field, and I can remember this. And he's like, I cussed, and he was like, hey, do you think you're going to heaven? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he goes, well, do you think so, or do you know? And I was like, man, I'm trying to get ready for practice. Yeah, I'm going to heaven. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, do you also know then that it says in the Bible that you need to have control of your tongue? And I was like, yeah, but Mike Martz is yelling at me, and I have no idea what he's saying, and I can't even break the huddle, and he's got me so rattled. And he's like, okay. He's like, just come over to my house tonight. We're going to have a couples Bible study. Bring your girlfriend. And so I did, and from there, it kind of got the ball rolling. But that precedent was set in the locker room where we would have Bible study. We would have chapel, and all these people would go. And again, I through the provision of God, I go to Indianapolis, and I'm with Clyde Christensen, who's a dear friend and a mentor, a guy that I look up to. Yeah. He does the yearly Bible 2 times a day. He does the audio version on the way to work, and then he reads it when he gets to work. He's just such a godly man. And that was right when my son was born, and just what he was able to pour into me. He gave me, Raising a Modern Day Knight as a book. So my mind started changing and transforming in a way that, when I was a child, I thought like a child. I would go and just kind of with the ebbs and flow, and wasn't prepared, like your mindset. I had to have an answer when things came up. Hey guys, we're going to go to strip club. No, I'm not going to the strip club. Things like that have to come up. But again, the team chaplains that I've been able to be around, the other, I was in a locker room with Sam Macho for a year. Just, Sam, and he's just an unbelievable man that was able to lead. We tried to host couple stuff, and sometimes you get to a new organization and the structure isn't in place, so you try and create that. And when I was in Cleveland, my wife and I hosted a couple study last year and absolutely loved it. We followed Dave and Ann's vertical marriage, and we're able to pour into people's lives. And I've never been one that like goes out and just beats my chest and says, hey, I'm a Christian. Like that's not who I am. That's not my personality. I'm more still the type of person that just wants to show people I'm a Christian by the way that I live my life, by the way that I operate, by the way I do things. And like, now that I was a much older guy in Cleveland and going to an organization, everybody's like, how are you so calm? How are you so relaxed? And I was like, guys, like, this is a game. You got to enjoy it, but there's way more important things. I was like, why don't you come to Bible study? You know, like stuff like that. And I had, you know, like it's a learning process. And so I don't feel like from a guy that was invited in a way that was very comforting, I also wanted to be the guy that just loves on people the way Jesus did. And I don't want to be the person that's going around saying, hey, read the Bible. Did you do your daily devotional? Did you do this or that? But try and start a small ripple that just kind of starts to go throughout the entire locker room and organization. And so that's one mindset that I always had. Arizona, we had a bunch of guys that were kind of in the Word. I've been fortunate to have like the He Reads Truth app and Bible studies that I've been doing for a long time. So no matter where I go, I always get like 3 or 4 extra copies and hand them out to other guys. And we just do a study that way too. So just finding different little things that can be able to do it. I mean, even simple things of getting your mind, like putting on the armor of Christ when you wake up in the morning, and every day on the way to work, I listen to the message or listen to some kind of thing to get my mind in the mindset. Because I know I'm walking into that. And there's times I still struggle with the fact that, you know, you get in this habit, this culture of the NFL of like your language. That's one thing that I know I still struggle with it 13 years later, being in that culture. And then I leave the locker room and there's no issue whatsoever, but it's like you have to check yourself. And so I've tried to do that over the last couple of years, have people hold me accountable and do vice versa. So there's many things, and it's everybody's personal journey.
I want to go back to what you said about Jon Kitna. And Jon obviously is Jon Kitna, you're Drew Stanton. But I think in our lives, I can think back to early in my walk with the Lord, there was a Jon Kitna type that was in my life that was, I wouldn't call him militant, but intense was the word I think you used. And I think that's the right word because he's so passionate about his faith. And it comes from a place of love. It doesn't come from a place of being a boss or you know, being bossy or trying to run people's lives or whatever. I've known Jon. We've had Jon on the show. He genuinely wants souls saved. Like he wants to see people come to know who Jesus is in the same way that he has. So how have you, and maybe even a better question is, what advice would you have for those who have a person like Jon in their life that's really intense and they're just, maybe it rubs them the wrong way, or maybe it's hard for them to accept because for you were willing to receive that. And maybe it was because of the position and the status and the veteran leader that Jon was, and you're the new guy coming in and you're like, whatever you say, dude, let's, you know, teach me. But that can turn some people off. So what would your recommendation be for somebody that's listening that might be, you know, wanting to share their faith? Maybe they feel like they're more like a Jon Kitna, but they want to be a little less intense than that. Although I still don't see anything wrong with the way Jon does it. It's just his way. Do you see where I'm asking here?
Yeah, no, I do. I think the biggest thing, and as I've gotten older, I've tried to tie in biblical principles even to young guys indirectly without them even knowing it. And that was one thing when I first met Baker, and Baker's like, you probably hated me when I first met you, man. I go, well, I saw you grabbing your nuts against Kansas, and then you planted a flag at Ohio State, and you got tackled by police. And I go, I've got kids. Yeah, I wasn't like a fan of yours when we drafted you, but I also know that God was in control. But I told him, I said, whoever you are, you have to be authentic. And that's what I would tell the person that's wondering that is like, you can take stuff from Jon Kitna. You can learn stuff from Jon Kitna. And I learned so much from him, but I wasn't going to be Jon Kitna. I had to be myself, and my faith had to be my own. I had to be authentic in that. And through that, like, that's why Dave Wilson and I connected so well, is he shared his scars. It wasn't this thing of perfection. It was this work in progress and a reliance in God and a roadmap that I was like, man, whatever that is, I want that. I want that, like, peace, that sense of comfort that, hey, like, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know who's going to be in tomorrow with me. And so I think that would be my biggest message, is just, you have to be who you are. You have to, okay, so like some people can just read through the Bible like this and understand it. I mean, I've got a study Bible. I feel like I read at a third grade level trying to understand everything,
Yeah.
but I want to truly understand it and convert it to memory, where like some people, like they can just fly through it. And through that, like Jon Kitna helped me so much. But I was also terrified of him. Like, I mean, I would like, he probably was so annoyed at me because I'd try and ask so many questions just to make sure the conversation kept going and going and going. It was football questions. It was questions about God. And it was like, what does it say about this or that or whatnot? And so, you know, that's the beauty of the NFL, though, is you have the ability to affect so many people throughout the course of life, where in college, there's at most a 4-year difference and everybody's about on the same page. When you get to the NFL, I mean, I was around some this was 2007, so I was around like old school offensive linemen, like guys that didn't care what they looked like. They weren't worried about what their star rating was in college or coming out of high school. I mean, they had a dip in their mouth. They were like crude. Like I was like, I wouldn't even talk to some of them, right? Like they're like, so you walked on eggshells in the locker room. But now in the NFL, there's like this weird sense of entitlement for kids that come in and feel like because they were drafted here or whatnot. I mean, even when I was drafted by the Lions, Kitna made me share a locker with Phil Horvath, and he goes, "No, you don't get your own locker. You haven't earned it." So like some of those like rookie principles, and I was fine doing all of that. And I was like, I don't have the answers, but I want to find the answers. And so like being able to do that, I had to get breakfast. I had to just all of the little rookie duties like he made me do, and I was fine doing them.
Was that weird for you to then become a Jon Kitna to a guy like Baker Mayfield? And I'm not saying you were like John, but you were that sort of veteran guy with this rookie coming in. Was that weird for you to kind of take that mantle, or was that something that you felt like God had prepared you to do?
I think God prepared me for it. You know, he wasn't the one that I probably would have picked out of the draft class, or even know that. But at the same time, I wasn't the one choosing. And I think, you know, spending 2 years in Cleveland and unfortunately not having the success we would have hoped for, it was difficult. But being able to come alongside him was one of the most gratifying things of my entire career, let alone the last 2 years. It just, again, like to your point, being able to invest in people's lives in the locker room and being a guy that feels like I have something to give away. I've always wanted to do that. When my mindset shifted, to your point again, of like, I'm not going to be a starter. Like, I want to be a starter, but I'm also very aware of where I am in the pecking order of how I'm doing that. And then it got to the point too where I was like, I got to look over my back, because if somebody else comes in, like, I don't want to lose my job. Like there's that balance between all of it. So being around Baker and being in Cleveland, like I feel like I was able to have fine-tuned a lot of things that I'd thought about over the course of that time, where I knew I was going there strictly to be a mentor. And I took the gloves off right away when I called him. I was like, look, I don't have an agenda. You can call anybody that knows me. I'm only here to help you. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do this all in together, and we're going to figure this out, and we're going to be as good as you can possibly be. I was like, I'll always give you my information or my thoughts on something, and I'll pro offer more times than not. Yeah. But then you have to take that information, you have to assimilate it, and then you have to apply it to the best of your ability, and then look back in hindsight and say, okay, this was good, this was bad, what I would have done differently. So it was really neat being able to share those times with him.
Drew Stanton's been our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Let's tell a story or two from your playing time. What's your favorite moment as an NFL player?
My favorite moment? I think for me, just because of my struggles that I had, well, there's a couple of them. Of just being able to overcome adversity really is what each one entails. But when I was in Detroit, my career obviously didn't go the way I wanted it to. And when I was starting out here in Arizona, Carson tore his ACL against the St. Louis Rams at the time. I was trying to think of which they were because they transitioned right around then. Yeah. And it was really difficult to see him tear his ACL because I knew what that meant. And in a quarterback room, I've always believed that everybody has to be tight-knit. And so when he hurt, I hurt. And it was difficult. And so to be able to go in there and win that football game against the Rams was phenomenal. I mean, that's, again, like early on I said, that's the test and the measure of a true quarterback as a backup. Can you go in and can you win a football game? I mean, Nick Foles is phenomenal at that. And a lot of guys, that's how you get longevity in this league. But then my wife was also 10 months pregnant at the time. So the next
10 months pregnant. Is that even possible?
Yes. Yeah, well, whatever it is, because I know it's 9 months. Well, it actually measures out to be 10. Like she was like ready to go
Yeah.
into labor. And so then fast forward, I spent 3 nights in the hospital. I was absolutely tired, and we played the Detroit Lions that week in Arizona. And to be able to go in there and beat them again, like I feel like that was just the Holy Spirit being able to empower me, because I had no energy. I had like just exhausted of trying to balance all of that, of go to the hospital, go to work, go to the hospital, go to work, and do this. It helps having an amazing wife, but through that, being able to beat the Detroit Lions, there was a little bit of a feather in my cap of like, okay, this is a team that didn't think I was good enough, and to be able to go out there and beat them. The other one was against San Francisco 49ers. My first start in Detroit, I got benched. I threw 2 or 3 picks in the first half, and it was hard. I mean, I was like, oh, I'm finally getting my opportunity. I'm going to the West Coast, and that's when like San Francisco's defense was like legit, like phenomenal, with Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, like flying around, and everybody up front. Like you couldn't run the ball on them, you couldn't throw the ball on them, and so being able to then fast forward again in Arizona and going in there on a Thursday night game on a short week and being able to beat them in San Francisco was really special. And we needed to win the game. So I've been fortunate, but it's been like piece by piece that I really felt like I've earned, or God's kind of put in front of me this next little obstacle to overcome to extend my career, because there's many times I was on the brink of not being able to survive.
Last question here, Drew. This has been a great conversation, and we'll make sure we get you back again for sure. 2020 has been a weird year in general, and you're not playing football, which is probably weird enough for you since it's been, whatever you said, 26 years or whatever that you have been playing football, but obviously a pandemic, all that's been going on here this year. What's the great lesson the Lord has taught you and shown you in 2020? What's he been teaching you? What's he been showing you when you look back and you think, okay, God's been teaching me this? What would you say?
Just slow down and embrace it. We're never going to get this kind of Sabbath type of rest back, and what we do with it, how we come out of this. I mean, I've had so many conversations about that and the patience that comes with it. I mean, there's times that I've wanted to rip my hair out or things like that. And you look there and you say, okay, well, let me draw back. And you feel like you're getting fast forward, especially we've got 4 kids now. Like your day is not wasted in any shape or any second at all. So being able to look at this and say, I read some really good books. And so what we started doing is we call it Friday Family Fun Night, but it's a Friday where we have like Sabbath. We shut our phones off. We still have some technology because we like play like records and do different things. We light candles for the kids. I say a blessing over them. So it's become this thing that's just become this great family event. And the kids get to have sparkling cider and they dress up. We call it, it's been a really neat thing to be very intentional. We talk about the favorite part of our week and do all of that. And that has been one of the greatest gifts we've been able to receive from this time period, because just even when we got back in January to when everything shut down, we were already in fast forward. My wife and I looked around, and again, the weather in Phoenix is optimal that time of year. You can play football, you can play soccer, you can go out and do anything, anytime, because the weather's perfect. And there's so many people out here doing the same type of things that you can get pulled in directions and just run this race that's not sustainable. So we really tried to be very, very intentional with slowing down, and Jefferson Becky's book, To Hell with the Hustle. Following that and just understanding what that looks like, we really, really try to embrace it. Now, living in Hawaii is probably a little bit easier to slow down and be intentional than Phoenix, but at the same time, I'm not going to complain about our weather here.
And I would imagine like the family fun night, that's something you're probably going to try and continue, right?
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, our kids look forward to it. We've been able to do this now, and we've had some friends over for the night and brought them over for dinner. It's really nice to be able to share this time. My wife gets fresh cut flowers. I mean, I feel like I can keep going about all the neat things that we've done because it just keeps building. But it really has become this thing that will become a tradition that we extend out and be able to hold on to even as we open things up whenever that may be.
That's cool. Drew Stanton, thank you, my friend. Great chatting with you. Thanks for coming on the show. And like I said, we'll do this again, and maybe we'll do it in person the next time. But I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Sounds good. My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Great stuff there from Drew Stanton, the former NFL quarterback. Really appreciate him joining us today on Sports Spectrum. Great stories, great conversation, and a great faith in the Lord. Drew's awesome. I mean, we talked for like another 25 minutes after we hit stop, and hopefully we'll get him back on the show in person at some point and tell some more stories. I mean, he shared 2 or 3 more stories off the air that I'm not sure if he would share those on the air, but man, they were really great stories. And I promise you we'll have him back on and we'll do another conversation and another podcast interview. He was fantastic. Drew Stanton, the former NFL quarterback. Thanks to Drew for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. We also want to thank our partners and sponsors, IJM, the International Justice Mission, helping to protect more than 150 million people from violence worldwide. You can join the fight to end slavery right now at the website ijm.org/TF, ijm.org/TF to become a freedom partner. We're also thankful to Compassion International for being a sponsor and partner with us here at Sports Spectrum. And right now they need your help to fill this stadium with an urgent need for supplies to help children and families in crisis because of COVID-19. Check out the website, fillthestadium.com to give now, fillthestadium.com. We also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com, for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. Articles, devotionals, every single podcast right there at the website, sportspectrum.com. And then do us one last favor. Click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode here of the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can listen on Spotify. You can listen on Apple. You can listen everywhere podcasts are found. Click that subscribe button and never miss an episode of our Sports Spectrum podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to today's show, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Love you guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.